Hi there. Okay, so this is a presentation on the Data City. Data City is a tech startup based in Leeds, and we're a spin out from the Open Data Institute node here. We're all about the redefinition of industry. So first of all, hello, I'm Alex Craven. I'm co-founder of the Data City, and I've been working on this project with Paul Connell and Tom and others for nearly 7 years now. Started in 2014 as a sort of side project, collaborating with the Open Data Institute, and then we launched officially, having been through sort of various stages of testing and research and development to build out the technology and the platform in November 2019. What are we? So we are what's known as a data as a service company, which means we provide data as a service. So you can access data via our platform on any economic sector of interest, and you can build sectors of interest for yourself using our technology. How did we come into being? So we were present at a session where TechNation came to Leeds and asked Leeds to tell them what our digital specialism or strengths were. And it was obvious from that session that no one knew the answer to that question, except by sort of anecdote, and that the data just didn't exist in order to change that. Listening to that session sort of sparked an idea, and a couple of pints later, Paul and I had come up with an idea about how to solve this and have a go. So how can we provide the answer, which nobody knew? The reason nobody knew was because underneath this is a big problem with industrial data. Everybody knows about, but no one's fixed. And because no one's offered a solution, people tend to sort of convince themselves that actually the data is good enough and carry on. And just because everybody accepts there's flaws in it, it's the best that there is. So let's just make the best of it. And the problem is Ssd Codes, which is standard industrial classification. And these are used to develop policy, identify investment opportunities, used for direct marketing, and they're actually also a key component of a business's ability to borrow money and its lending score. There are a number of problems with Ssd Codes. So the first is that they are no longer relevant. So they were sort of started as a platform in the 1900s, and they were last updated in 2007. So as you can imagine, most of the sort of exciting and emerging areas of our economy just aren't covered by them, which is point 2 on this thing here. So there isn't an Ssd code for fintech or agri-tech or a lot of the green energy sector and net zero and so on. There's another problem in that the system relies on a company updating its own Ssd code classification, which you basically really only do when you set your company up, even if they write and ask you to. And often it's done with no understanding of why you would do it and no benefit to the company. So very little mind is paid to it. And the final thing is that it's a static system. And to agree, there are over 400 classifications. To agree, though, that list takes a lot of time, years. And obviously, I think what's happened with Ssd codes is we've hit an environment where the economy moves faster than the ability of humans to update the classifications. So you could start now and say, right, we're going to create all these new classifications for the emerging economy, but it might take you 5 years to agree that. And then by the time you try and publish those, you look at the economy and it's changed. So you don't want to publish those ones. You're in this never-ending loop of never quite being able to keep pace. Just to bring that into relief, here is some stats. We did a mapping of the artificial intelligence sector, and you can see that our AI sector has lost in over 200 individual Ssd codes. So what that means is that organizations that are working with artificial intelligence are choosing over 200 different Ssd codes to define what they do, which is a symptom of how problematic it is to find an Ssd code that neatly fits the operations of these businesses. if you look at the top SIC codes, they contain a total of over 500,000 companies, of which 542,307 are not AI companies. So they are, in this case, information technology consulting companies, not AI focused companies. So if you were to find this sector, which is, these are the most popular SIC codes for it, you'd have to pick those SIC codes, and then you'd have to pick out the small numbers, 489, 470, from the many thousands in each of those SIC codes. The most problematic on here is the other business support service activities, NEC, which stands for not elsewhere covered, which in itself has over 250,000 companies in it. When you add all of the SIC codes together, which start with other, which are sort of dubious use, 32% of all UK businesses have ticked one of the others in the SIC code classification systems. And then there's something like a further 15% which have no classification at all. So you're pushing toward 50% of all UK businesses not being usefully categorized or classified. So that, we think, is a big problem, and it is the problem everyone sort of accepts but just works around, and we're going to try and solve that. So the changing structure of the economy, this is a quote from an independent review of the economic statistics in 2016. So this is, now in 2020. The changing structure of the economy means that SIC will constantly lag reality, underrepresenting newer industries and overrepresenting ones that are declining in importance. And you can see, I think, very obviously the effects of that, right? So that means that investment and intervention decisions are being made more slowly than they should be. And we're not properly supporting the transition from traditional economies to emerging economies. And we're not backing our future winners quickly enough. And actually, there's a key strategic advantage if the UK can get better at that when we think about ourselves in terms of our global economic competitiveness. It's often impossible to find new companies using SIC codes. So that's a big restrictor on investment. It limits growth. It slows down economic development. I'm going to give you an example. So I think we all are aware of the explosion of the craft brewing sector, and there's a revolution going on. So we know beer brewing sector is undergoing a craft revolution, but what is craft beer? So we know it isn't an SIC code, and we're going to bring this to life through telling you a story about something we discovered through our own analysis of the craft brewing sector. So this is Tom and Lucy. Tom and Lucy run a craft sake brewing company called Kampai, based in the UK. So they believe they're the first, and what we see that they are, to be based in the UK. So they're innovators even within the craft brewing sector, and they are applying craft brewing techniques to traditional sake production methods. And they've come up with a hugely innovative range of products. So you've got sort of canned sparkling sake at 5% ABV, which I'd certainly never come across before finding this company. I have ordered it and drunk a fair bit of it since discovering this, and I can confirm it's very nice. Where would you find them in the SIC code classifications? So, I mean, dubiously, you probably wouldn't look under this classification, but if you did, they're currently classified under manufacture of other non-distilled fermented beverages. There are 304 companies in there producing kombucha, mead, shots in a tube, and juice drinks. Would you look for craft brewers in that? It's dubious, but if you did, you'd still have to wade through 303 companies to find them. And nobody is looking for that. Nobody is looking for companies that are active in the manufacture of other non-distilled fermented beverages. That's not what you would type into Google to find this company. And that's the problem. SIC codes are particularly useless if you're looking to identify emerging sectors and innovation that are critical to the future of our economy. The actual classification itself, is often 5-6 words: manufacture of other non-distilled fermented beverages. But it's a classification, not a useful description, and again that causes problems in discovery. So we're about fixing it. You can see here a list of the sectors that we're actively engaged in mapping at the moment, and you can see, very critical parts of our economy here. Got quantum technology, which doesn't have an SRC code, Internet of Things. There's a load of sectors here which are connected to the net zero objectives, so energy generation, energy management, energy storage, and obviously finding clean energy and decarbonisation solutions is a critical focus for the global economy, and obviously specifically in the UK as well, where we're looking to competitively position ourselves in this. But how do you find that sector? How do you support that sector? How big is it? How well is it doing? How quickly is it growing, et cetera, et cetera? These are the questions that our policy developers just don't have access to the data to answer. And that's where we hopefully kick in. So at the moment, if you try to find those in SRC codes, you'd have a problem. It would take you a very long time. You'd have to wade through huge amounts of irrelevant data to find those companies. And realistically, you wouldn't. It's too expensive and too haphazard. The other method is you sit down with Google and you start looking for them. But again, that's often a reflection of their investment in search engine optimization. And obviously Google is not a platform designed for this use case. So you can't extract and download the data easily. And you're relying again on your human mind to come up with the search phrases, which often means you'll miss parts of the sector just because you can't be aware of every company. If you're looking for a sector you don't fully yet understand the limits of, the reaches of. It's not just a UK problem. Standard industrial classifications are used internationally. I won't attempt to pronounce the Dutch version of it, but there is slightly more sophisticated versions than SIC used elsewhere, but they are still following that sort of static method and predefined classifications by a very short phrase. So what's the answer? We have developed a new classification system, which we're referring to as expert in the loop. So that's sort of build on there's a commonly used term, which is human in the loop for working with machine learning, which is supervised by humans. In this case, it's not just a human, it's a sector expert or experts to help us make sure that we've properly captured a sector in the training set. So how does it work? We start off with, we've actually got a database of 4.5 million companies with their financials, of which we've mapped over 1 million to their website. Those million are what we would refer to as the sort of actually economic productive companies within that data set. So we have most of the interesting companies now matched to their websites. And the reason we do that is because a website is a much better description of a company's activities. And it's also frequently updated because the company has a vested interest in doing that. So it addresses a lot of the problems with SIC codes. The challenge is it's a lot of content and copy which you need to process. So that's where the machine learning kicks in. So we define taxonomies and sectors with experts, so from government, non-government partners, and we build training sets in our platform with great examples of the businesses that we think reflect that sector from all of its various sort of niches. Machine learning then looks at the website content and scores every website in our database against the classifier. And from there, we're able to build and train a list, which only includes companies that we believe match the training set, which enables us to then do really efficient and effective economic analysis or targeting of businesses. We publish those in our own classification, which is an RTIC code, which stands for real-time industry classification. And the real-time bit of that is because once you've built the classifier, every time we re-index the internet, we automatically find new companies either diversifying or starting up in that sector and add them to the classification. So we don't wait for companies to tell us, we find them proactively and add them to the classification. And then every year we go back to our experts and we review the sector, we look for the innovation in the sector, and we update the training set and rerun the whole classification process to reflect the shift in over those last 12 months, which again, we think deals with that sort of whole static nature of SIC codes effectively. and that's super powerful and enables us to map previously hidden sectors such as craft brewing. We then are able to produce insights on each of those sector lists that we've produced, we've built. So you can see things like the economic trends of that sector, the growth rate in employment, or size of the sector by number of organisations, and also by turnover and value. And we can start to analyse other sort of key trends within it, supply chains, and so on, by looking at their use of technology in the process. We can identify companies that are critical in that supply chain, and lots of other pieces which we think are unique. You know, we're the only data provider that's able to provide a lot of the insights that we supply to our customers. So all this sits in amongst our mission statement, which is to create the new global standard in industrial data. This year's specific mission to take us on toward that ultimate objective is to map the UK's emerging economy sectors. And you know, I showed you this list earlier. These are the ones we're actively engaged in right now. We've also got a big announcement coming on net zero. So we're doing a lot of work to try and help understand this sector. Obviously net zero is an outcome, but it's also a supply chain of solution providers, which are critical to enabling the UK to decarbonise, but also they are a future economic driver ourselves. And we believe we have an international strength in the sort of innovation required to solve this problem. So watch this space. Big announcement coming in the next few months. And that's it from me. Thank you for watching. You can get in touch via our website or our social media accounts, or of course you can get in touch directly with myself. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks, Alex. What a fantastic talk just before lunch, and some great conversation in the chat there as well. So I'm not going to pick up the questions you've answered already in the chat because you've stole our thunder here. But do you want to just explain again how Arctic's our development of Ssd codes and how that's going to impact things?
Yeah. So when we set out to try and provide information on emerging sectors, one of the observations is that it's not just about creating new classifications. The economy is evolving so quickly that the process of creating new static classifications will just create another problem in that they'll be out of date by the time that they're published. So what we had to do was completely rethink the way that classifications work, but try to create something that's near enough to be sort of usefully transferred to. So our classifications aren't designed to replace Ssd codes as such. They're designed to provide something new that's able to keep pace with the emerging sectors. So the example I sort of most commonly use is if we'd have defined cybersecurity 10 years ago, it would probably have been one sector. Our latest cybersecurity analysis breaks down into 11 subsectors, and every year new technologies are entering that market that create whole new subsectors of interest, which are, you know, very large economic drivers, as well as, you know, extremely important infrastructure for the global economy. So that's the key. You've got to be able to sort of every year go back to your understanding of cybersecurity, work back through that and ask yourself whether 11 subsectors is enough, or is it now 12 or 15, or are those now merging back? And then enable useful longitudinal view of that data so that people can do meaningful analysis and keep track of it and support it properly.
Fantastic. And that leads me to my next question. So how long does it take to create a list, and what's the impact of doing it this way using machine learning?
So that's the benefit of machine learning. I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're taking a really mind-numbing human task, which would be picking up a company, finding its website, looking at its website and asking yourself whether that's a cybersecurity company or not. and you're asking the machine to do that at scale over a very short period of time. So a list, a sector, can be built in a couple of hours. A properly, rigorously expert reviewed Arctic code can be done in a couple of weeks if you're fully focused on it. And that's not all time spent working with the machine learning, that's just giving yourself time to be sort of humanly reviewing and checking. So hours is the short answer, and for really high quality, rigorously quality assured work, you know, a couple of weeks for the whole elapsed time, but maybe like a day of people hours in the middle of that. And
obviously time is money, so the quicker you do it, the more effective and more efficient it can be.
And that's the other benefit, I think, is the fact that it's stored in a platform which, if you want to introduce a new understanding or new technology, all you need to do is introduce new examples to the classifier, and then it will go and find all the other companies that look like those new examples. And then that data set lives. So again, it has a big impact on the way that reports on sectors are written, we think. We think what we can do now is you can separate the data and just deploy that as a platform, sort of picking up on Zandra's talk, and make that a live dashboard on a sector. And then people can come and write reports and analysis and policy on that at time and place of their choosing.
Amazing. Thanks very much. And just quickly before we finish, what's next for Data City and the work you're doing?
So our major focus at the moment is on classifying the emerging economy and within that net zero. We're then looking at applications of our products in other markets. So we're very focused on supporting M&A activity, and there's a B2B application for this. But beyond that, toward the end of this year, we're looking to go international and eventually global.